It's not what I know, it's who I know. And that's why my special guests on the quest are my two favorite people from the MS Society, local here in Arizona, Sue Kelly and Brandee Wessel. How you guys doing?
Doing good, doing
Welcome
good.
back to the show, day 4 with Sue and Brandee. How you handling it?
Pretty well.
This is pretty cool,
Yeah,
isn't
you're
it?
making it fun.
And why are we talking about MS? Well, we set aside once a quarter. Brokers Alliance, our sponsor, sets aside, we want to do something for charity. This is a really worthy charity. And I got to tell you, if you've listened to the last 3 shows, and if you haven't, you need to hop back on our site at brokersalliance.com or visit us on our account sites at Vimeo and YouTube and Ustream or any of our social sites and visit us because we're talking about it. And what really bothered me the last 3 days, and I have to say this, Brandee, because you're the impetus behind my bothering, I noticed that every time I asked you a question, so much of it was cloaked in generic answers, generalities, nothing specific, which is exactly why we have to do research because we can't say anything specific. There are no true remedies, true cures, true therapies, perfect drug management, any regimen that I can put my hand on and say, this is working.
Right.
See, and that's why I'm just so, it's a frustration, even as a host, to hear you talk this way. Because I can't get to the next point because we don't know where it is. And that's why it's so important. And if you're saying, Steve, how can I hear about this? I've been listening to you the last 3 days. You can check us out. I want you to go to their big luncheon. It's going to be huge. Thursday, April 28th. It's going to be held at the Arizona Biltmore. We're going to have Cameron Parker, a person who's has MS for a long time. She's going to be our keynote speaker. We're going to have Dr. Darren. Not Barracuda.
No.
Akuda, Dr. Akuda, the Barracuda of MS. Yes, tell him I said that too.
I will.
And I want a free exam. And what we're talking here today, of course, is I want to talk about this segment, and I want to get really down in the everyday issues. Now, when I was interviewing you 2 segments ago, you were talking about being on the OB floor as an RN. Mm-hmm. And you said your left leg was not cooperating. You couldn't run down in an emergency. You were scooting, maybe, or.
Well, no, I wouldn't.
What were you, dragging, or?
I'm walking quickly. I'm not running.
Okay, but kind of the left leg is not cooperating.
It doesn't move quite as quickly as the right one does at times.
Is that a painful issue, or it just doesn't work?
For me, it is.
So there's physical pain.
Mm-hmm. Some people with MS do experience pain.
Mm-hmm. There could be people, you could have MS, you could have maybe like a leg or arm or something, but it's not painful, it just doesn't work right.
Absolutely.
So it's because a couple people I know had that experience. It's not really painful, it just isn't working.
Right.
When I think about the differentiation between this, because I know a lot of people are familiar because it's so pronounced from a physical point of view. I saw a gentleman today when I was heading for lunch. He probably was in his early 80s. He had Parkinson's. His left hand was shaking. It was visible. Mm-hmm. And when he went to grab his cup, he used both hands to steady the other one, I'm assuming, right? That I can see. But sometimes when we're talking about raising funds and raising awareness and asking for research dollars, and you don't see it, it's not as clear to see, and that's why we're doing the show. We're trying to bring visibility in an unseen world. Talk a little bit about not only your experience as a OBRN doing the graveyard shift, right? And sometimes when the left leg doesn't want to cooperate, but this affects other areas of our life. And I noticed on Google that areas of intimacy, areas of household, just normal household chores, relationships, you had a tough day, maybe your spouse isn't cooperating with you, it's not maybe you get used to your wife having it, right? Mm-hmm. And then you start to kind of get angry and words are exchanged. I mean, things like that happen.
I think you touch so much on what's really important is the invisibility of MS, because people will say, oh, you look so good. It's like, don't feel so good today. You can't tell what's going on with somebody on a given day. And that's hard for families to understand. There may be overwhelming fatigue that this mom with MS is experiencing. And her husband comes home and he's had a tough day and he's like, how come dinner's not ready? And why isn't the laundry done? And how come she's telling me she needs help with the kids and she's gonna go lay down? I'm tired too. So the most important thing that couples can do is really ramp up their communication. I think we can We can all do better at that, but when you're dealing with something like MS, you have to say what you need, you have to say what's going on, because our loved ones aren't mind readers. We wish they were.
You know, a lot of people, when you go to marriage clinics, and we're just talking marriage, we're not talking about complicating with a disease, right? When we're talking about marriage, communication isn't really, you know, the number one on a guy's mind, right?
Not so much.
No. So you know, we're not really, I wouldn't call us great listeners, all right? I would say that.
Well, I know with my husband, he wants to fix it. You know, if he can slap a big old piece of duct tape on something, that's fantastic, and he's done his job.
I love this guy.
I think I do too. I think he wants to slap a piece of duct tape on me sometimes and just fix it.
Does it work?
We have not tried that. I'm gonna try it today.
Okay.
But I have to tell him what's going on too, and I've told him, you know what, you can't fix this. I just need you to listen and say, wow, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. What can I do? So for us, that's work.
What does it do for you to hear that?
It makes a lot of difference to know, okay, he's heard my concerns, he sympathizes, he wants to help. I mean, he's a great man. He comes up with a piece of chocolate and says, here you go, honey, what else can I get you?
I love chocolate.
Yeah, 33 years of training. He's done well. Yeah,
wow,
he's great.
Now, Brandee, when you hear stories like this, is that typical or not typical of your 8,000 Arizona clients?
You know, I'd say it goes both ways. You know, we do unfortunately hear the cases where, you know, we have clients who get divorced, and, you know, that's another you know, thing we try to help them with through our support groups. But then we do have those husband and wives that are a team, and they're unified, and they are on the same page, and working towards, you know, the same goal. So
what kind of financial impact hits families with this? Because is MS expensive to manage with these regimens you're talking about? Are all the insurance carriers online with this issue? Are they paying for this? I had to bring it back to our show sooner or later, so it took me until Thursday to do it, though.
No, you know, these medications are extremely expensive, thousands of dollars a month.
But $1,000, who's paying for this?
It depends. If you have insurance, you know, other clients, as I mentioned, they're no longer working, they're on disability, so it really depends on the situation. And here locally, we have an emergency financial assistance program for our clients. So we fund nearly $40,000 every year for people who need assistance with, you know, whatever that is financially.
Not necessarily medications, but maybe they need some help with rent or an electric bill in the summer because they've got to have their home cool.
So you're beyond just the medical stuff.
Yeah, and not even, you know, like she said, funding medications, but, you know, building a ramp in their home, building a lift in their vehicle. You know, again, the medications are so expensive that sometimes they can't, you know, pay those other bills like Sue was mentioning. So that's where we step in and we try to help them as much as possible get through those tough times.
What is it like to be poor and have MS then? If everything you just told me is true, what is it like to be poor and have MS?
I think it's a far greater challenge to maybe have some mobility issues and only have one vehicle in your family, and the other person needs that to get to work. So if you need to go anywhere, you'd have to rely on public transportation.
What's that like with MS? I mean, what's that like?
I would imagine it's pretty difficult to try and get yourself to the bus stop or to the light rail because Phoenix, let's face it, is not that accessible a city. There's a lot of places that aren't as accessible for people with disability as we'd like them to be.
If we're trying to frame our cause that we're talking about today, MS, women with MS, and we're trying to have people engaged, and not only the luncheon that we've talked about, I mean, we're all for that, but there's and some of these things like that I love that race thing you were talking about, the challenge walk, you know, and you said one of these, the Nationals come through our town. It's coming, what?
Actually, the bike ride. Actually, we have several events, but the challenge walk that Sue's talking about, we don't have one in Arizona, but there's one in San Diego actually in the fall. So if someone's interested, they can definitely visit our website. What's this thing that's coming to Phoenix here? Aren't they doing something? Yes, we have a Bike MS event that's March 26th and 27th. And where exactly is that? It is in Florence, Arizona, and the ride goes through Coolidge, Florence, and Casa Grande. It's a 2-day event, 160 miles, fully supported bike event. Will you be there? I sure will. Well, remember, you'll say, hey, I heard Brandee on the radio.
radio. Sue, are you going to be there? Do you know? Or?
I am not.
I was going to say, I want to see you on a bike.
No, last time I rode a non-stationary bike, I ended up with knee surgery. So I'll watch from the sidelines.
Okay, we're watching from the sidelines. We're being spectators today. Although that does surprise me, Sue, since you are such a out there kind of a person.
2 wheels and I just,
okay.
We don't mix.
Okay. Well, and then we have you say there's other things too, right?
Yeah, we have 3 walks, Prescott, Phoenix, and Tucson. We have a bike event, the women's luncheon. We have 2 wine events.
What's the soonest coming up? Oh, good. We got to get back to the wine.
Yeah, bike event is March 26th and 27th.
In Phoenix.
Well, it's in Florence, but yeah, it's.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk about the wine events because I know the principals of my firm, my sponsors, they want to know where the vino is. I mean, and by the way, very good touch because that's probably a very good advertisement to get people to come to your event, right? I love wine tasting. I don't even drink. How about that?